Good afternoon. My name is Dr. J.P. Sanchez. I serve as the Executive Associate Vice Chancellor for DEI at the Health Sciences Center at UNM. I want to welcome and thank everyone for joining us today for the first event of the month for Women's History Month. So happy Women's History Month. On behalf of the Office for DEI at HSC, on behalf of Dr. Romero-Leggett, who serves as the Vice President for DEI at Health Sciences Center, thank you for making the time to join us today. For those who are unable to join us, this presentation will be recorded and posted on the HSC Celebrations webpage. Before we begin, I just want to go over a few housekeeping items. One, we will be using a Zoom webinar format that does not allow participants to address the panelists directly, but rather through the Q&A function. You can see panelists, but panelists cannot see you. The chat feature is not available. Please place your questions in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. We will try and address as many as we can at the end of the presentation. With that, I want to welcome and thank our three distinguished speakers for leading today's presentation on menstrual equity at UNM Health Sciences Center. I just want to briefly commend them on their sustained efforts, which is unique to maintain an initiative over several years. So I'm really excited to appreciate the history and their ongoing endeavors. I'm going to pass it over to our own learner, Dr. Amanda Collard.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. I'm Mandy Collar, and I'm an MD PhD student here at UNM School of Medicine. And I've been working in the menstrual equity realm for about 3 years. Varina.
Hi, everyone. My name is Varina Kosovich. I'm a library info specialist at the Health Sciences Library in the Public Services Department.
And I'm Sally Bowler-Hill. I'm the Manager of Administrative Operations at the Health Sciences Library.
Do we have, oh, perfect. So today we're going to be talking about menstrual equity, both here at UNM Health Sciences Center and a little bit more abroad. Next slide.
So some of the topics we'll cover today. Oops, Sally, can you go back one slide? Thank you. We're going to give an intro into menstrual equity and period poverty, and then move on to a couple of campus initiatives that are trying to address these issues. We'll also be discussing progress both in-state and internationally. And finally, we'll share a bit of news and some of the resources we used for this presentation. And as mentioned, we're hoping to have time at the end for discussion and to answer any questions.
Next slide. Thank you. So today, in honor of Women's History Month, we're going to be talking about period poverty as it relates to those who identify as women. However, at this point, we also want to point out that period poverty and menstrual equity also affects people who are identifying as transgender, those who are non-conforming, genderqueer, non-binary, and these issues actually disproportionately affect those who identify as not white, and those who are homeless, those who are low income or consider themselves poor, and those that are incarcerated as well, disproportionately. So although our presentation focuses on women, we do want to just provide that information and that background. Next slide. So to get everyone on the same page, menstrual equity refers to the limited or inadequate access to menstrual products or the education needed to properly control your menstrual cycle as a result of either financial constraints or negative sociocultural stigmas that surround menstruation. Next slide. So I'm not going to poll the audience, but I'm going to read this question and just take a second to yourself and think about what you think the answer might be. So how many days does the average menstruating person have their period in their lifetime? Next slide. So it's almost 7 years of their life that they have a menstrual cycle, which I thought was very surprising when I first heard that. Next slide. And then for the 7 years of menstrual cycle, how many tampons or pads does the average menstruating person need to use to control that cycle? Next slide. Almost 20,000 products. And that figure could go up or down depending on, the type of cycle that the woman has, if it's particularly heavy, if they have certain medical conditions that would make their cycle more heavy or longer. Next slide. And then this is my favorite one. How much does the average menstruating person typically spend on period products in their lifetime? And I think this one's going to surprise you. Next slide. So the total cost of having a period in a lifetime is about $20,000. And this isn't just taking into account things like tampons and panty liners and pads, the things that you normally think of, but also other things that you need to control your period. Periods can be really painful. You may need heating pads or Midol or NSAIDs to control the pain, new underwear when you bleed through, medicine to control that acne that at least I had during high school, birth control, if that's something that you're interested in, and of course, things like chocolate, which have been proven to help. Next slide. And then period poverty, on the other hand, is a similar idea to menstrual equity, but refers to how many people don't have a choice on if they're going to menstruate or not. And 1 in 4 people struggle to afford those necessary items that they need to control their menstrual cycle due to affordability. As I just said, these products can be really expensive. Some of the data I've seen shows that $9,000 alone can be spent on the tampons and pads. And this, of course, affects, people's daily lives. If you can't afford these products to control your menstrual cycle, you may not be able to attend school or work. Next slide. So there haven't been many studies into period poverty, particularly at places like the HSC and other academic medical or health sciences centers. But one particular study looked at period poverty among undergraduate females, and they found that 14.2% of women experienced period poverty at least once in the past year. And then an additional 10% experienced period poverty every single month, meaning that every month they struggle to afford these necessary items. Next slide. And as I already kind of alluded to, period poverty becomes a DEI or a JEDI issue when you take into account that this disproportionately affects people of color. So nearly a quarter of Black people and Hispanic people struggle to afford these products compared to only 8% of those who identify as white. It can also affect those who were born outside of the United States more greatly and those who are first-generation college students more greatly. Next slide. And altogether, period poverty has medical consequences. So leaving products in too long or using pads for too long can cause urinary tract infections, contact dermatitis. It can lead to, feelings of embarrassment, shame, depression, anger, disappointment of not having those items that you need. One study showed that can lead to a poorer quality of life. And those who have period poverty monthly, they have a 2.34 times. They're 2.34 times more likely to report symptoms of moderate to severe depression. Next slide. And this is just exemplified by a quote from the study that showed that period poverty was significantly associated with depression on a gradient. Women who had experienced period poverty every month reported more severe depression. So the more often you have period poverty, the more depressed you may feel. Next slide.
So with that background, we're going to discuss the North Campus initiatives that are currently underway. So this includes the Library Menstrual Equity Project and Mandy's project assessing menstrual equity at UNM HSC. So the Library Menstrual Equity Project began as an idea in our Justice, Equity, and Inclusion Committee after a few of us found a note in one of our restrooms expressing frustration about the lack of products. We thought this was an achievable step that we could take for one of our goals to make library spaces more accessible. So we started having discussions in the committee and with Sally and library administration about steps we could take to implement the project. Sally's going to talk a bit more about that in a bit, and as well the budget we had for this project. We ordered our first batch of supplies in September of 2021, but due to supply chain issues, we weren't able to place the products in the restrooms until November of 2021. So the products, when we got them, were placed in all 6 of our restrooms, both men's and women's, and library staff volunteered to keep the bins stocked. It's kind of difficult to determine the success of the project because we're dealing with such a private thing, but we've seen very consistent use of the products, and they usually have to be restocked 2 to 3 times per week. So this does illustrate that the products are needed. Some days only a couple of menstrual products are taken, and other days the whole supply in the bin is gone, which is great, right? We want folks who need these products to take them, whether it's just to get them through the day or to get them through the rest of their cycle. Next slide, please. So 2 of our main considerations were the type of products and how to get them to everyone who may need them. We at first looked at purchasing bulk through institutional channels, but ran across some delivery issues and a lack of variety in the products. We then switched to Amazon for all of our ordering. We felt that if we purchased consumer products, folks would be more comfortable when they used them. I think many of us have the experience of using bulky products from the dispensers, and they can be really uncomfortable. So we wanted to take that into consideration. We ended up purchasing Kotex pads, Always panty liners, and Tampax tampons in a variety of sizes. Another important consideration for us is equity. It's important that products are in all restrooms, including the men's room. We don't have a universal restroom yet, so we wanted to make products as accessible as possible for transgender, non-binary, and gender non-conforming folks. Also, I think having them in the men's room helps to reduce the stigma around these products, and also men could provide, their friends or partners with products if they needed them. Next slide, please. So here's a photo of our library setup. We did have an old empty dispenser mounted on the wall in the restroom that Sally worked with facilities to remove. The bin we chose is just a simple plastic bin. It's easy to clean and so far has held up pretty good. We've also seen that offering a variety of products was a good strategy as all 3 products get used throughout the week. Our signage is a bit hard to see in this photo, but we went with the eye-catching design with a brief message about how the products are free and to only take what you need. We put these signs up in the men's room as well, but recently switched them out for something more basic. Sally thought it would send a better message to the folks who might need them and help to further reduce that stigma.
So our total project cost to date in the library has been about $1,300. About 2/3 of that has been on buying the product itself. And we've purchased about 6,500 products at an average cost of 14 cents a product. As Varina mentioned, we did incur some costs to remove the old unused dispenser to reduce confusion. So having been through this for 1.5 years now, we're projecting that the costs, that this will cost the library about $600 per year to continue to fund with product. I've budgeted this. Part of the funding is going to be coming from our portion of the HSC student library and technology fee. We had we reallocated some money that was budgeted for supply costs towards this. And the other portion is going to come off from salary savings within the library for at the end of the year operating costs. There have been a couple of assessment efforts that we've endeavored to do in the library. First, we completed an analysis of free vendor dispenser options because, as Mandy showed in the photo, we have these baskets currently, and we wanted to look at whether the dispensers would be a better option. Particularly, they're free vends, so there's no coin or anything, but they definitely, would keep things cleaner. The dispensers run between $250 and $1,200 a dispenser. And the other drawback to them is that you can only have a limited number of products. They're often brand specific of what brand that you can use in the dispenser. And so it kind of limits your options, but that is really what the cost of a dispenser would be. We tried requesting feedback on offering these products in the library through our Improvements for You display in the library. And while we got lots of comments on a lot of things, we did not get any feedback related to menstrual products in the library restrooms. So we added questions about these products in the library restrooms to our recent customer satisfaction survey that some of you may have received in February, and we're awaiting the results from that. We've also, as Varina mentioned, have gotten some anecdotal feedback from to the desk staff. But overall, it's been difficult to assess a subject like this that's very personal.
So along the same timeline, approximately, that the library was gearing up to provide these free products in their own bathrooms, I became curious about more broadly if these items were available throughout UNM HSC. To do this, I created an IRB approved project under the direction of Dr. Valerie Romero-Leggett. And I'd like to share some of the results with you today. Next slide. So there was a little bit done before I started this project. There was a small project done under the direction of Dr. Barrett with Martha Gallegos leading the project. And this was looking at the accessibility of different women personal care needs at UNM HSC, mostly within the hospital. They didn't assess HSC as a whole, and in the study, they were only looking at 3 buildings within 17 clinical areas with 14 female restrooms. And within this very small sample study that they did, they found that there were no tampon, sanitary napkin dispensers available in any of those hospital bathrooms, let alone products available for free. Next slide. So what we did was we went around to every restroom on UNM HSC campus, both female, unisex, and male restrooms. And right now I'm only showing part of the data just for brevity's sake. But you can see that free tampons, pads, and panty liners are really hard to come by within the educational and research units. Tampons are only available in about 10% of the bathrooms. Wall dispensers aren't even available in all of the bathrooms. Only about a third of them have those wall dispensers. And the dispensers themselves haven't been stocked in over 10 years. Advertised costs also vary widely, anywhere from like a dime to 50 cents. And in all of the bathrooms, except for at the library, of course, all flow products are not available. So if you're looking for, a very specific product going into a random bathroom within HSC, you might not be able to find that. It's also important to note that although it does appear that free products are available in some of these bathrooms, these products are provided out of the goodwill of faculty and staff, not departments in most cases. And HSLC is the only place that you can consistently and reliably find these products. I am not showing the data from the male bathrooms, but it's of course even lower than what is shown here. And at the hospital, within the public restrooms, there are just no free products available. Next slide. We also wanted to assess people's attitudes towards menstrual product availability throughout HSC campus. So we got this IRB approved survey up and running through REDCap, and it's still open. So if anyone wants to snap that QR code, you're welcome to real quick. But next slide. We found so far that menstruators are largely just not aware of where they could access product at HSC, and it gets even worse if they're after work hours. So just to kind of orient you, down at the bottom is the question we asked. So on the left side, for instance, we asked people, I know where I could find menstrual hygiene products on UNM HSC Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. if needed. And then we used the Likert scale, going from strongly disagree in red to strongly agree in green. And you can see here that the vast majority of people don't know where they could find menstrual hygiene products during work hours, and even worse, after hours. Next slide. We also found that because menstruators don't know where they can find these products, they often undertake various coping mechanisms throughout the day and throughout their cycle. So we asked if they have ever done any of the following because they didn't have access to menstrual products. And you can first appreciate that many people undertake various coping mechanisms. So people could select more than one option in this bar graph. So you can see that the majority of people have used other products. So things like toilet paper or, like a makeshift pad. People have also borrowed products from friends or colleagues. They've also used products for much longer than they were recommended to by the manufacturer. And not a large portion actually went without product at all, which is really unfortunate. Next slide. We also found that the majority of people are not satisfied with the availability of products currently. So you can see here once again with red being not satisfied, gray being neutral, and then only 15% of people were satisfied with the current product availability. Next slide. And because of this, people do feel like this lack of access to menstrual products affects their well-being. So here you can see that the majority of people actually said that they were neutral about this, but a fourth of people do feel like not having access to this necessary product affects their well-being. Next slide. And to demonstrate this, I just want to tell you a few quotes of things that people told us about why this is affecting their well-being. So one person said that on occasions where I have needed a pad and not had it, I have felt severe anxiety, as well as physical discomfort if I'm not able to change my pads regularly. Next slide. Another person said, it's difficult to carry a full day of work with no available menstrual products if you had an emergency on top of all the issues that menstruation causes, like nausea and pain. So you can just imagine, I've been there. You can imagine starting unexpectedly and then, having cramps and then all of a sudden realizing that you also don't have the product you need. Next slide. Someone else said that the truth is everyone forgets something in a day, whether it's medication, pet-related, childcare-related, or other day-to-day items that people need to remember. This is not one of the items that can't be forgotten either. So this just highlights how necessary these products actually are. And next slide. This one I love. It says, there have been times where I had to use tissue and bled through my underwear onto my scrubs. When I'm in a high pressure job, it's so difficult to devote my entire mind to patient care when I worry if I have menstrual blood on my scrubs. And I think that this is just so relatable and something that we often don't talk about because of the stigma around periods, but this is a real issue. Many of the people on HSC campus take care of patients all day, every day. And it's unfortunate that half of their mind has to go to, I hope that my menstrual cycle is cooperating with me today because I don't know where I'm going to get a tampon. Next slide. And although period poverty largely does not exist on campus, there are about 17% of people who took this survey who experience period poverty either every month or a few times a month. So that's nearly a fifth of people who are struggling to afford period products here on HSC campus. Next slide. And I think lastly, we found that 82% of respondents agreed that having menstrual access or menstrual product access would be an equity issue. So altogether, I hope I've convinced you that this is really a DEI issue, and having access to these menstrual products is just so important. Next slide. Oh, just kidding. I have one more. We also asked if free menstrual products would be available on HSC campus, if people would be willing to use them, or if they would be happy to use them. And you can see here that overwhelmingly people would be interested in using those products. Next slide.
So Mandy's work and Varina's work kind of culminated together. Got me thinking, I'm going to contact the vice president's office, and we got together a campus-wide committee with help from the folks who have the HSC Wellness Program. So the scope of our committee includes the HSC campus, but not the hospital and clinical areas. There are multiple surveys, as has been mentioned, going on campus about this subject. The committee is still trying to determine what the cost would be to do this HSC wide. The library has just a small number of the total number of people who come to campus every day, and so we're still trying to get some idea of cost. And then the other thing that the committee is tasked with is assessment. How do we measure the success of this project? As Varina and I mentioned, it's been really hard to assess the project just for the library. So how will we assess it on the HSC campus?
So when we were in the campus-wide committee, one of the things we discussed was the best locations for effectively providing products to students, faculty, and staff. Buildings that we discussed included nursing and pharmacy, Fitz Hall, Dominici, and then BRF and CRF, as well as the student lounge. A representative from the hospital was invited to the committee, but due to the sheer scope of providing products to staff and patients, they felt that the hospital wouldn't fit into the scope of the North Campus project. I think Mandy's survey illustrates that it doesn't mean that there isn't work being done at the hospital or there isn't a need for these products at the hospital, but it will understandably take a bit more time. There's also a representative from main campus on the committee who is interested in the results of the North Campus initiative in the hopes of having free products on the main campus as well. I know there was recently an article in the Daily Logo about access to menstrual products, which again illustrates that there is a need, but it might take a little bit more time to achieve over on main campus.
So within the survey that was under my project, we also wanted to collect some information to kind of figure out where the products would be most needed. And as it turns out, the products are needed almost everywhere on North Campus because menstruating people visit all of the buildings on North Campus. However, there were some that stood out. So Dominici seemed to be a very popular place that a lot of people would want to see products, as well as the hospital, and of course HSLC, which is already providing them, followed by nursing, pharmacy, HSSB, and FITS. Next slide. And then we also asked what products would be most useful for people if they were to be provided for free or for a cost. And there were, once again, a few that stood out. However, many people were interested in a variety of options, including more sustainable options like period underwear or washable pads or menstrual cups. But the three top choices that people were most interested in were regular flow tampons, panty liners, and pads. Next slide.
So the campus-wide project is very much in progress right now, and we're looking at how we're trying to assess how much product will be used in monthly and annually. That's really key to determining the short-term costs. We also have to look at the long-term costs. Not all the bathrooms in the HSC are equipped with large counters that you can put just plastic baskets on. Some of them don't have, some of the older bathrooms don't have that, and you really need a dispenser. And as I demonstrated, there's a lot of cost associated with that. As I mentioned before, how do we assess the service? And then where do we grow the service after the pilot? We'll be talking a little bit about a pilot in a minute. After we do that, what's the next step?
So now that we've talked about North Campus a little bit, we want to broaden our horizons and talk about the progress we've seen towards menstrual equity in New Mexico. The focus on menstrual health has been encouraging during the last couple of years, and there's been some excellent progress. Next slide, please. So a really easy thing for states to do is eliminate the tampon tax. This tax is specifically on menstrual products, which are often classified as a luxury item. I think anyone who has used these products will recognize that they're a necessity, not a luxury. States collectively make over $150 million annually from these sales taxes. Next slide. I'm happy to report that this tax no longer exists in New Mexico. It was eliminated in 2022, which is definitely a step in the right direction. Even with the elimination of the tax, menstrual products still remain too expensive for some folks, as Mandy discussed. So hopefully this momentum will continue and progress will be made to offer free supplies statewide for communities who need them.
And along that line, HB 134 is recently being considered within our state legislature, and it would allow for free access to menstrual products in school bathrooms. Some other states have already done this, like California and New York, I believe. The State of the Period recently came out with some statistics of why this is so important. And I know I hate it when other people just read off slides, but bear with me, I'm going to do it anyway. So they found that 3 in 5 students say that they rarely or never find free period products in their school bathrooms or in public restrooms. They also found that 1/6 of students are forced to choose period products over other essential items, which is just so devastatingly sad. 69% of students said that they're embarrassed when they have to take their tampon to the bathroom with them. And I can say as a middle schooler, that was always the worst time to like try to hide what you needed in your sleeve or something as you went to the bathroom. And then this one, I think, just speaks volumes. They found that nearly 60% of students said that they feel like their school doesn't care about them if they don't have free period products in the bathroom. Next slide. So like I already mentioned, HB 134 is being considered right now, and it would provide free menstrual products in all of the women's bathrooms and the gender neutral bathrooms, and at least one men's bathroom in public schools, including middle schools, junior high schools, secondary schools, and high schools, and then at least one bathroom for the public elementary schools. And this would appropriate $3 million to accomplish this task. Next slide.
So we also wanted to talk about New Mexico House Bill 7, which is also currently in progress. HB 7 is a bill that protects reproductive and gender-affirming healthcare. It prohibits public bodies, including local municipalities, from denying, restricting, or discriminating against an individual's right to use or refuse reproductive healthcare or healthcare related to gender. It also ensures state law protects families in every part of the state. So it passed the New Mexico Health and Human Services Committee, it passed the Senate Health and Public Affairs Committee, and just a couple of days ago, it passed the Senate Judiciary Committee. It's now on the way to the Senate floor, and if it passes there, it will go to the governor's desk. I don't think we can speak about menstrual equity without discussing other types of healthcare that are currently under attack. We're seeing anti-abortion and transphobic rhetoric and actions nationwide. And although abortion access remains legal in New Mexico, there has been pushback from several cities. Cities like Clovis and Hobbs were encouraged by an anti-abortion group from Texas to pass ordinances restricting abortion access. Every day we're seeing more and more transphobic legislation to restrict or outright ban gender-affirming care. And the ACLU is currently tracking 107 healthcare bills in the US. Tennessee just passed a bill banning gender-affirming care for minors, and several other states have similar bills. We know the clinical importance of providing gender-affirming care to both minors and adults. We know it's often life-saving care, and these bills are extremely harmful to the trans community. It is encouraging that New Mexico is trying to pass a bill to the opposite effect, and we must continue to fight for access to these crucial medical services. I think in order for our advocacy to be equitable, we can't leave folks behind when they don't have the option to make their own healthcare choices.
And we also want to shed some light on some progress towards menstrual equity that's been going on internationally. Next slide. So in 2020, I know a lot was going on, so you may have missed this exciting news, but the World Health Organization called for menstrual health to be framed as a human rights, gender equality, and a health issue instead of just a hygiene issue. So this is them saying that this is more than just about hygiene. It's about physical, psychological, and social dimensions that all need to be addressed. And I think that this was a really big step forward to showing that this is an important issue internationally. Next slide.
In 2022, Scotland became the first country to offer free period products on a national scale. It was a unanimous vote. And now products are available in pharmacies, community centers, and other public spaces. They're truly leading the way in free period products.
And finally, just last month, Spain became one of the first European countries to allow women who have menstrual pain take off time for that pain. So more than half of menstruators experience dysmenorrhea, and Spain is finally recognizing that that is an appropriate reason to need menstrual leave. So you can take up to 3 days per month for that menstrual pain. And they're joining countries like Japan, Indonesia, South Korea, Taiwan, Vietnam, and Zambia to allow women to take that time if needed. Next slide.
So we've mentioned a couple of times, but it's really happening. We're going to do a soft launch of a pilot in the Domenici Center for Health Sciences Education starting March 20th, right after spring break. We're going to provide the health, actually, I should say, it's not we, the HSC the HSC is going to provide menstrual products in 14 restrooms. That's both men's and women's, and the universal restrooms in the complex. They're going to use baskets similar to what Hislick has done, and provide a variety of free products. They're going to post QR codes to gather feedback from this so that we can try to assess the success of the pilot.
So with that, I'd like to first acknowledge my team who's been so helpful in gathering all of the data, including the PI, Dr. Valerie Romero-Leggett, and my co-conspirator, Remy Link, as well as all of the students who have been helpful with the project, went to all of the bathrooms across campus for me, as well as the campus-wide committee, including Carlotta, who's been outstanding in helping us to make this achievable, as well as Michael Crocker and just so many others. And I'll turn it over to Varina.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Mandy. This is definitely a team effort. It's not just the three of us. It takes a whole group to get this done. And I'd also like to acknowledge the library staff who help keep our bins supplied in the restrooms. They're really great, and they're often doing it like unprompted. They just know to check for an empty bin and restock it. So I think that's wonderful. Also, a shout out to Colleen Molesky, the chair of our JEI committee at the library. She was really great when we were first discussing this project.
And I'd like to do a shout out to the HSC Wellness Program, including Carlotta, Adrienne Tenario, and Vanessa Roybal for letting us approach them with this as a possible wellness project. We could not have gotten further along had they not been open to the idea.
And with that, here once again is your cue to scan that QR code and please take our survey. And we would like to open it up to any questions or open it up to really a conversation.
I just want to say thank you again to all of our speakers. If I can pose one of the first questions to our panelists. So if you can share a little bit more about how other schools are also leading these efforts, and if you've been able to coordinate with learners or staff or even at other schools. I think it's always impactful to hear, the leadership undertaken. And not only medical schools, but if you've been in contact with learners at like nursing schools or public health schools, and because I think I really appreciate that, hearing how we compare.
So from my literature review, I have only seen a handful of schools, and I think at least one law school who has offered free menstrual products for students. Often it does start as a student-led initiative and students bringing that awareness to administration. I have not seen that they've been widely available at any health science center or medical school, but I'll open it up to the rest of the panel if they know more.
I know we were looking at what other libraries were doing in our literature review. So we looked at several public libraries and their initiatives. I believe libraries in the LA public library system are offering free menstrual products in some of their branches. So we looked at them and just a couple of smaller libraries to see like how they were getting products to people. So that was the majority of our literature review. Sally, did you have anything to add?
We also noted a growing number of universities who are offering them campus-wide. So the University of California, all the state of California is now providing them in all schools, including in higher education. And there's been some literature out there, like campus papers and stuff about these programs in the California schools. I also know University of Northern Arizona has a campus-wide initiative for it. Most of these bigger programs usually have formal dispensers, free vend dispensers, and they choose a more limited number of products in order to be able to scale the project out to a much larger campus.
Excellent, thank you. One of our community members posed a question. This comes from Haley Sock. Although the grant for period equity that my organization has had ended, we are interested in trying to implement this type of program at city libraries if we can obtain another grant. My apologies. Will your data analysis be shared after this? It would be very helpful in appealing for funding.
I guess it depends what data in particular you need. It sounds like you're interested in the library aspect. Maybe just more clarification, or maybe Varina, if you.
Yeah, if you're interested in the library initiative, we're definitely open to sharing any of our processes. We don't have any assessment data as of yet. We're trying to get that, but if you need to reach out about any point in the process, we're happy to share that. I can put my email in the chat if that would be helpful.
They're particularly, they said awesome, thank you. And the cost analysis of implementation is of particular interest. Another question comes from Mark Fisher. Is there any information on why the dispensers that were installed had stopped being stocked over 10 years ago? Was there an administrative decision, and how does the current administration view this?
Yeah, so after talking more with Michael Crocker, who is in charge of, if that's the right word, custodial services, he informed us that it was decided quite about 10 years ago to stop restocking them because of the change issue. The custodians had to have special training to handle the money for like the people who would be like taking out the tampons, and that just became like too cumbersome to handle. So I think it was not so much that they weren't being used, but more so that the money aspect was the problem, was my understanding.
Yeah, that was my understanding as well. And for those who don't know, if you're handling any kind of money at UNM, you have to take cash handling training, and it's fairly elaborate. And it was really meant for taking vast amounts of cash to the bursar's office under a high security kind of situation. But even dealing with small pocket change, you have to take that training.
Excellent. Is there an opportunity to engage more of the college students to help advocate this along with all of you? So how has coordination been with main campus, as this is a university-wide concern?
So we do have some representatives of main campus on our committee, and they're very interested in seeing how the implementation works for us and kind of what the feedback is, what the cost is, but they are very interested in hopefully moving in a similar direction to us.
So I'll just pose one additional question. I'm a big proponent of writing up these experiences. What are the next steps in trying to publish your work? I know some presentations have already happened, sharing the information at the AAMC. What are your hopes as future presentations or publications?
Yeah, so I am about a year away from match day. Woo! So after almost 8 long years here, I am very interested in writing this up. That's part of why I was so eager to get the IRB approval and make sure that we collected the data in a way that would be useful for anyone else who's going through this. I think we are interested in trying to collect just some last survey pieces before the soft launch on March 20th, and then hopefully start analyzing the data and writing it up, I hope. So hopefully it will be in PubMed and other people can use this experience and show that, you know, this is highly needed across universities, other medical schools, law schools, the community, just everywhere. Let's be like Scotland.
On the library side of things, we've presented at the New Mexico Library Association meeting, and I think Varina and I are looking for opportunities to do more regional or national library association kinds of meetings. That's, for us, the best publishing venue is to get the word out to other libraries, and that's how these grassroots things tend to start in libraries.
Absolutely, yeah. We had another question. Has the team thought about providing period packs with the logo pantry? I know period poverty isn't just a student issue, but it may help decrease barriers if students who were at the pantry could also receive period supplies. Selfishly, I'd also like to see more of a pantry presence on the North Campus too, and wonder if that might help. Yeah, thanks, Alexis, for that. I think that would be great, and that would be like kind of a next step for where we're at now, like how do we increase this accessibility? I saw a great presentation by the Quet Society, and it's an Indigenous organization who provides, I believe they call them moon packs to students in high schools, and they're just little like fabric pouches that students can reuse and keep their supplies in. So I think something like that here would be amazing.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like I've seen it. There's like a food pantry in the student lounge connected to the Minichi now. And they do have some like non-food items like COVID tests and stuff like that. So I think that would be a really great place to put some of these products as well. Especially since, as I showed, 20%, almost 20% of the people who took my survey have period poverty at least a few times a year. So, I mean, having just a box of tampons in there may be really helpful for some people on campus.
I think you bring up also a really good point about food banks in general. So the Lobo Food Pantry is primarily stocked by the Roadrunner Food Bank and follows the Roadrunner Food Bank's rules. And it would be really great to see food banks start adding menstrual products as part of what they provide to people who need food. I think that would be a really fantastic idea of a pilot.
There's plenty of ways for other people who are interested on the call to like spearhead something. So if one of these ideas takes you, please go forth, because as we already said, like it takes a village to get this change done. So
Well, I want to say thank you again, and I'm asking everyone who participated to please give a huge applause. And thank you to Varina, Amanda, and Sally for their incredible work in promoting menstrual equity here at the university and at HSC. Amaris will be posting a post-session assessment, which we ask you all to do so we could provide feedback to our speakers. And thank you again for joining this program for Women's History Month. Be on the lookout for the upcoming events this month. We have 4 more sessions, so I encourage everyone to stay with us for the entire month. Thank you again, everyone. Thank you, Amaris. How do you